guys, what can you tell me about Heather Feather? Did she really wrestle a bear? Did she wrestle men? With all the women's lib and battle of the sexist sports in the 70s, was Memphis trying to capitalize on that by doing intergender matches? Did this in some way lead to Andy Kaufman matches with women? Got very curious about this and couldn't find very much information. Thanks very much. Love the show.
Did she wrestle bears? Did she wrestle men? Did she put the lotion on the skin? Heather Feather was actually a very nice girl. A very polite young lady, as I remember. I've only met her a few times, but she happened to weigh in a neighborhood of 350 pounds, close enough to where you could say a little more, a little less, and people wouldn't really be able to call bullshit, right? She's a big girl, and about easily 6 feet tall, maybe six, whatever, somewhere as tall as me, as I recall, if not taller. And so she became somewhat of an attraction for a little while there because you could do a gimmick match where, okay, let's say in 1978 in Louisville, Chuck Malone, who was this rail thin, he had been a Memphis TV job guy. And he was lean. I mean, he looked in great physical condition, except that he wasn't as big around as Lawler would say. His muscles on his arms looked like mosquito bites on a strand of spaghetti. And he had long gray blonde hair, and just he was just gaunt. He was just a skinny, gaunt man. Right? So he becomes the manager of the Bounty Hunters. So here's fucking Chuck Malone, 6'3" and 140, being put in a gimmick match to embarrass the heel manager with this 350-pound girl. Because in those days it was allowed to be publicly announced that if a girl beat you up, it was embarrassing, right? I don't know what is that the take on it still today, or do we have regulations on that?
It probably is still embarrassing.
Well, anyway, or Heather Feather might be in the Battle Royal. Because here, they can say a girl is going to be in a battle royal with, 15 of the guys, but she's the heaviest one, or what, that type of thing. And she's a nice girl, or a special partner. I think one time I remember Chuck Malone wrestling the bear, and I remember Chuck Malone wrestling Heather Feather. I don't remember Heather Feather wrestling the bear, but I'm sure she probably did. Because then you could say, okay, in addition to the rest of the competition for the evening on the wrestling event, we're also going to have a 350-pound woman fight an 800-pound bear, and that gets people's attention. So that, and I remember Paul Morton, Ricky Morton's father. One night he comes in, he tells me and my mom, we would just come in, we're trying to set up the pictures and everything. And he says, because since Heather Feather did not really work a territory, she went like the girls and the midgets, or the little people, or the dwarves, or whatever they're legally allowed to be called today. The Little Tokyos and Lord Littlebrooks of the card. They just came in for a week or two in a territory, and you'd do the gimmick matches, and then they'd go on somewhere else. So Paul Morton was given the task, since Heather Feather was only in for a week or two and didn't know anybody, that she could ride to the towns with him. And he comes in, and he's like, I think she's sweet on me. He could talk real low like that, and he had a real straight face. And of course, he's a Morton, so you're not. It's a great story, but some of you almost with it, but it could be too good to be true. But anyways, I think she's sweet on me. I'm gonna have to start calling her Heavy Feather. Because Paul Morton was like 5'3" and 130 pounds or whatever, and he looked like Popeye the Sailor, and so she was 3 times as big as he was, and the car was sitting sideways. Oh God,
she was in I Like to Hurt People.
I bet she was. Heavy Feather. Yeah. So yeah, I remember she probably, now that you mention it, maybe she was trained by, didn't Lou Klein up in Michigan train a few of the women? Maybe she was from his camp, because I don't remember seeing her against any of Moolah's girl.
Right. And that was actually going to be my next question. Who would be booking her? Because if Moolah isn't booking her, I mean, that's probably why she only worked for the Sheik and for ghoulish.
Well, but then also, I think it would have probably been whoever trained. No, I think she worked other places. I remember seeing her. Seth Hansen, by the way, Seth is back on Twitter after scaring us all to death. He was in the hospital sick, but is good enough to post now, so we don't expect miracles. Seth, just keep doing your job. Anyway, he needs to find some heather feather clippings from I know she worked a couple more territories than that, but the point is, I don't remember her necessarily wrestling girls, except maybe in Michigan when she went out to the other territories, so they wouldn't really have had to dealt with Moolah if she was coming in to do a bear or a man. God, that sounds just. And she was such a lovely girl, just in spirit. But you would need another girl, is what I'm saying. Unless you and maybe there weren't really a lot of valets at that point.
And I believe she did in fact wrestle the bear. Well,
there you go. See, she was into bestiality as well.
Our next question comes from...
if somebody needs... No, let's go the whole way with it. Somebody needs, instead of this intergender bullshit, if you want to prove how bad you are, somebody needs to come up with the World Bestiality Championship and beat a bear for it.
When you said let's go all the way with this, I did not think that's where you were going. The World Bestiality Championship?
Yeah. And we either need to have a bear champion or somebody needs to beat a bear to hold it. The World Interspecies Championship, then, if that might be more.
Are you saying you think a bear is the toughest possible animal opponent?
Well, goddamn, they're natural wrestlers, Brian.
Well, what about the wrestling orangutan that we learned about from Bobby Fulton?
As a matter of fact, here's the thing. I have never seen a wrestling bear fling poo. See, they try to keep it sportsmanlike. The orangutans are just brawlers. If you had Wild Bull Curry, you wanted him to fight an orangutan, I'd go along with you there. But if we're going to keep this to good, clean athletic competition, bears are good, clean wrestlers. And on the Wrestling Gold DVD set that's going to be available starting November 1st at jimcornette.com, there's even an example of Gene Dubois wrestling Terrible Ted from the early 60s up in upstate New York. And this was one of the most scientifically wrestling bears that I've seen. I sound like Nick Goulas now. In my many years of wrestling promotion, I've never seen a more scientifically wrestling bear. He was doing the bear mare, which is the snap mare, but it's a bear. It throws you over and they lock up. And I think he did a couple leg dives. He's a very well-trained, athletic bear. There you have it. See, so it can be very, very scientific.
Who would you take, a bear versus orangutan?
Well, now that depends. If the orangutan could get to the bear's eyes, and I think there'd be a problem there also with the just the wiriness of the orangutan and being able to outmaneuver the big lumbering bear. But if that goddamn bear chomped down on that orangutan's neck, whoo! Good Lord, he'd be graveyard dead in about 2 seconds.
Right, but if there are things hanging, if there are branches, and an orangutan can hop up and fling himself over and...
Yes. Now, see, I thought you were talking about just flat-footed and out in the field, but if you're talking about a jungle environment...
Well, yeah, I mean, I thought you were talking about them in the ring. No, of course I'm talking about a jungle environment. What flat field are we doing this matchup in?
Well, bears, goddamn, can fucking fight out in the middle of the goddamn meadow. The orangutan could be caught going from one clump of trees to the other.
You need
a meadow, and the bear might have the advantage because that orangutan wouldn't have nothing to jump up and grab onto.
See, you need it to be in a setting like the jungle where, even though it's not a wrestling ring, you can kind of have an area that's not open field so that it just becomes a relay race.
Well, we need to put this in development.
We haven't even introduced the kangaroo into this equation yet.
If we're going to do this, and now you want to now you're going to cheapen everything.
What do you mean cheapen?
What do you mean cheapen everything? Putting a kangaroo?
I've seen
that people are not going to take it seriously if we put a kangaroo in this thing.
Kangaroos probably have more fighting experience than the bear or the orangutan.
Well, yeah. But see, then, because the kangaroo actually is scientific enough with its hands that it could potentially win a boxer wrestler confrontation with the orangutan.
It just takes one kick. Forget about the hands. What hands?
I'm sorry, with the bear.
Oh, okay.
But now, never mind.